For more than a decade, Tommy Shelby has occupied a space in popular culture that few television characters ever reach. The dark overcoat, the razor-edged flat cap, the cold stillness of a man always calculating 3 moves ahead. Since Peaky Blinders first aired in 2013, the Birmingham crime lord became something larger than a character. He became a myth, and like all myths, the version people carry in their heads is far cleaner than the truth buried inside it. Throughout the 6 seasons of the original series, Tommy returned again and again to the same refrain. Everything he did for the Shelbys. The protection of the family was the justification for the empire, for the violence, for the decades of calculated brutality. It became the moral anchor of a man who had very few others to hold on to. Audiences accepted it. Many celebrated it. But the story unfolding on screen told a different, far more uncomfortable version of events. Tommy built his criminal organization with extraordinary precision, manipulating allies and enemies with identical coldness. He placed his brothers, his cousins, and everyone who shared his blood directly inside the machinery of danger he was supposedly protecting them from. The people closest to him died. The people who survived were changed in ways they never asked to be. And through all of it, Tommy Shelby called it love. Cillian Murphy, speaking in recent interviews ahead of the film's March 20 release on Netflix, pointed to generational trauma as the beating heart of the new story. He described a belief that such cycles can be broken, but acknowledged that Tommy himself may not be the man capable of breaking them. The reason Murphy gave was simple and devastating. Tommy abandons his son. That son is Duke Shelby, who arrives in the film already leading the Peaky Blinders, while his father lives in voluntary isolation, writing his memoirs, and attempting to place distance between himself and everything he spent his life building. On its surface, the generational handoff feels dramatically clean. The old king retreats. The new one rises. Except the emotional architecture of the original series makes this framing deeply complicated. Duke appeared only in the 6th season of Peaky Blinders. He and Tommy shared almost no meaningful time together on screen. Duke did not grow up watching his father operate. He was not inside the rooms where the decisions were made that defined the Shelby family across generations. He inherited a name and an organization, but the actual emotional weight of Tommy's story, the war trauma, the grief, the endless cycle of calculated sacrifice, was never passed between them in any real way. The true emotional heir to everything Tommy Shelby carried sits somewhere else entirely. His name is Charles Shelby. The son he had with Grace, the woman who represented the closest thing Tommy ever found to genuine peace. Charles is the child who holds the most direct line to the version of himself Tommy claimed to be fighting for. And by the end of the 6th season, Charles is gone. He leaves Birmingham with his mother, Lizzie Shelby, who makes the decision to walk away from the Shelby world permanently. Tommy stays. His son goes, and the show marks the moment with a quiet devastation that cuts far deeper than any of the violence that came before it. What makes the loss of Charles even sharper is where Tommy directed his grief instead. In the final season, the emotional center of the narrative is not his living son but Ruby Shelby, Lizzie's daughter, who dies and leaves Tommy consumed by guilt, superstition, and an almost obsessive spiral of mourning. Ruby becomes the vessel into which Tommy pours all the tenderness and redemptive longing he could never quite deliver to the people still standing in front of him. Meanwhile, Charles quietly disappears from the story. The son, who could have represented a future, steps off screen, and the man who built his entire mythology around family does not follow. This is the contradiction at the center of Tommy Shelby's life, and it is the contradiction that the new film will have to decide whether to address honestly or allow to remain in the shadow of spectacle. Duke's prominence in The Immortal Man raises a genuine question about what kind of legacy the film is actually interested in exploring. Duke may be the functional heir to the Peaky Blinders empire, but the emotional inheritance of Tommy's life, the wound that never closed, the pattern that never broke, belongs to a different story entirely. The film's title adds another layer to all of this. The Immortal Man does not seem to refer simply to Tommy Shelby as legend. What may truly be immortal is the system he built, the machine of power and controlled violence that keeps running even when its architect tries to walk away from it. Tommy's isolation and his memoir writing suggest a man attempting to frame his own history before it frames him. But the world he created does not require his presence to continue. It never did. That is the nature of what he built, and perhaps the most honest accounting of what his legacy actually is. For the large wave of viewers discovering the Shelby universe for the first time through Oppenheimer and Cillian Murphy's expanded global profile, the Immortal Man may arrive as an introduction rather than a conclusion. They will meet a weathered man writing in isolation while his world continues without him. They may see the elegance, the intelligence, and the weight that Murphy brings to every scene. What they may not immediately see is the long trail of choices the son he let leave, the family he claimed to protect and slowly dismantled, the refrain he repeated until it became its own kind of lie. Tommy Shelby was never a hero in any traditional sense of the word. He was a man of extraordinary capability who survived the First World War by turning strategy and violence into instincts, and then came home and never found a way to turn them off. He built something magnificent and something terrible at the same time, in the same hands, with the same mind. And in the end, the most haunting measure of his life is not the empire he created, it is what the empire cost him, specifically the quiet departure of a child who walked out of Birmingham and did not look back. So here is the question worth sitting with before March 20 arrives. When Tommy Shelby's story finally closes, will the film give us the man or just the myth? Do you think Tommy ever truly built a family, or did he build something that only looked like one from the outside? Drop your answer in the comments below, and if this breakdown hit different for you, like the video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to see it before the film drops.